All right, you heard my conversation there with the Assemblyman who's going to be leading this investigation. You know what the governor has to say. Christie says he's innocent here and he's ready to wash his hands of Bridgegate. However, someone else has to pay the price for those lane closures. And so far, Christie's former aide, Bridget Kelly, and former Port Authority Chief David Sampson, they're among the top players who seem to be bearing the brunt of it. But none more, though, than Bridget Kelly. And we've seen, Jeannie, you know, we're starting to see a woman scorned or whatever. But the attorney's words today, for the first time, going public and using words like sexist, venomous, and worse, talking about her relationship with Stepien, who used to be formerly within the administration, working on the campaign of the governor, et cetera, trying to make her unhinged, et cetera. I just, from the outside, it seems like they not only are pushing her, but they're going overboard to the point where she becomes a bit of a sympathetic figure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been frustrated by the report because the term that people are throwing around is slut shaming and slut bashing, and that's, you know, what we're seeing when you look at the report. Now, what, you know, I'm certain what the attorneys would say privately is that, look, they were hired to defend Christie. They're doing it to the best of their ability. They want to make sure that if she has something, and again, they didn't talk to her, and she comes out later, it's plausible to say, look, she was a crazy, scorned woman. How could you trust her? But at the same time, I agree with her attorney and so many other people who have said, including Laura Weinberg, who've come out and said this is sexist. You've taken somebody's personal life and you've put it on display for what reason? Why talk about the fact that she was dumped by Bill Stepien? What possible relevance does that have? Well, it has relevance to the defense of Christie, and that's about it. So, you know, that's, I'm sure, where the attorneys are coming from. And Randy Mastro came out this weekend and said, it's, you know, it's not sexist because we're throwing David Wildstein under the bus too. I mean, we attacked him too. Well, if you're attacking men and women, it's the same thing.
I thought it was a real missed opportunity if you're just thinking Machiavellian on the part of the Christie team, which is you put out the premise of this is an independent investigation. You got a lot of former prosecutors on there, et cetera. Why have Mastro, his personal attorney, be the voice and the face of this thing? It immediately came off wrong. But we're inside baseball. I think to a lot of the general public, you could have sold this thing as legitimate, but the content of it, you're going after this woman with cheap shot after cheap shot. And I'm not a Bridget Kelly defender after what she did, but it didn't suit their aims, which were to make the report seem credible when it seemed really amateur hour.
Well, it says to me that the Christie team, defined as they, may have concluded that of all the involved people, she's the one that may cut a deal with the feds, that she's the one that they fear. So they're trying to ruin her reputation before they get to that stage. But you know, Richard, I don't know how you could have looked at this as objective. And frankly, you got to give the governor credit. Think about this for a second. I'm going to investigate myself. I'm going to clear myself. And I'm going to give the taxpayers $1 million check because I hired these lawyers that are boys with me, Randy Mastro and team. Rudy Giuliani said it best this weekend. I think he said, and this is a fellow Republican, not me, Rudy Giuliani. He said the report was not conclusive, I believe his exact words.
I think they're banking on the fact that it's not the content of the report, but how they sell it. Because you notice as soon as the report came out on Thursday, you have the Mastro press conference, Christie goes to the press Friday.
I'm with you, but don't you think they sold it terribly, that it came off like an inside job?
I think only if you open up the report and start looking through the details of it, but when you get into how it looks, the public imaging of the whole thing.
But the media reported it as an inside job.
But you've got Christie sniping back at reporters at the press conference on Friday, and then going into full campaign mode again, moving to Las Vegas on Saturday for the big Shelley Adelson
Richard,
fest.
you've led investigations in your time in Albany on this. Explain how...
This wasn't an investigation.
No, I know
this was a press release.
I'm moving forward now to what the feds, and to a certain degree the legislature is involved. How does the immunity deal work in that? Walk us through the process. You're the attorney now for Bridget Kelly. What do you want for what?
The feds say to them, what do you know? And on a non-disclosure basis, and if they like what they hear in terms of what they think they can do up the chain, they grant immunity.
And there's two kinds of immunity, right?
There's transactional immunity, that is, anything dealing with this issue, we won't go after you. And there's use immunity, we just won't use your testimony. It's very complicated legal stuff, but none of this matters. Look, Randy Mastro is a very skilled, talented bully. And they decided they needed to be able to say, not me. Like in the Maltese Falcon, when they need a victim, they need a fall guy. They're measuring her up for hanging. You can like it, you can don't like it. and they're eating up their own. This is not as though they're blaming someone who's a liberal Democrat.
Yeah.
She was on the inside. If she has stuff, she's been put in a position where she's going to tell it to the feds. If she doesn't have stuff, it's a very clever ploy to demonize her.
I'm interested. You mentioned bully, and certainly there appears to be some bullying in this report as it pertains to Bridget Kelly. There was bullying by Christie going back to the press conference with the press on Friday. I wonder, and my thought at the time was, will people see this as too much of a return to normal too quickly? That all of a sudden what had been seen in a positive sense of pushing people around for his own use.
Hard to tell. In the end, everybody should, as I've said before, relax. The evidence will come out in a matter of weeks to months, and we'll be able to know if there's a smoking gun. And if there is, fine. If there isn't.
However, you're right, except does there have to be a smoking gun? And I ask that because if there's a drip to this. David Sampson, the day after it comes out, magically, he retires, okay? And then there's the questions. Now we're hearing, we all remember the Hoboken mayor, Don Zimmer, who claimed that the lieutenant governor, Kim Guadagno, told her, hey, if you play ball with us here and do this and that, then we'll make Sandy funding available. Otherwise, there's going to be a penalty, basically, to any less than loving embrace of this governor. Now it turns out that there's a developer in Hoboken, and they're talking about waiving attorney-client privilege. He's going to say that he was in effect, or at least the implication is, privy to a conversation also with the lieutenant governor where she said similar things in his presence as well. I guess my question is, sure, on a criminal side, if this goes there from the feds, is there a smoking gun? Is there a trail that goes to the governor? But is there also a daily, if not weekly, marginalization where all these different characters, all these different agendas, and all this different baggage just keeps bringing the governor down and down? The polls seem to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, his poll numbers have dropped, 20 points? But I think, what else is Chris Christie going to do at this point? He has absolutely no choice but to put his head down, keep working as governor, try to get some successes in New Jersey, and try to keep working as the head of the Governors Association. He's got no other choice. And, in terms of the bullying the press, nobody gets upset when somebody yells at the press.
Well,
nobody cares at all. So he doesn't have a lot of choice.
For what he's doing, and it's Nixonian. Remember Patrick Gray, the head of the FBI, they're going to let him hang twisting in the wind?
Yes.
Yeah.
These
I
are
love that
not
line.
accidental, tactical, strong defense things. There's a defense pattern that some people think works, which is you find the world a scapegoat, you throw them some red meat, and maybe they'll leave you alone. Dominic was right. Christie's first concern is criminal. His other issues about how it looks.
But help me out. No one's answered this. Obviously, we all agree, abuse of power, etc. But where's the crime?
Well, it depends on what he did.
Right now, with what we know, has a crime been committed at all?
If he was aware of the lane closing beforehand, then there was a conspiracy to misuse federal funds. There was a conspiracy to misuse the law. There was a lying to the investigative officials. No law, as Saul Walker once said, a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. Christie falls into the rough heading of ham sandwich here if there's evidence. If there's not, he's going to walk and will suffer then the political consequences, but not the legal ones.
Andrew, we've covered Trenton for a while, and one of the things we always said, I was pretty surprised, was whatever you think, Dominic, he's had a lot of political persuasive skill, but also he knew how to work Democrats in that he was less Republican than he was what's good for me, we'll cut up the pie, North and South Jersey. That's really how it works, even more than Republican, Democrat. Nobody wants to trade with him now, though, in Jersey, and that's going to be part of his problem. In the legislature, he's toxic right now for Democrats to play ball with. The Sweeneys and the Codys of the world and whatever.
But they still need his signature in order to get stuff passed, or they'll need an overwhelming majority of the votes in both chambers, which they may not have. Their self-interest has generally ruled in Trenton.
But Christie wants to say that he's still functional, to
Right.
Jeannie's point, that he can still get stuff done. He had willing partners before out of self-interest. I don't know that they'll be willing now, even if it's in their interest.
I think the state government will continue to function if he wants to go for a deeper agenda.
But
I
it is
think
in
that
a
might
bad
be different.
economic state.
It's a
It's in a
wrap.
bad economic state.
Christie's done. I don't care what in his mind he thinks that he can do. The presidential campaign is over. Democrats are no longer afraid of him.
I think it's
That's
a
why he
premature
was so.
obit.
Really?
On the 2016
maybe
front,
you're
I might
right,
agree with you, but when it comes to governing New Jersey,
He's not the
it's
type
still-
that's going to resign.
the
He's Rudy
legislature-
Giuliani. After the affairs, Rudy would not resign. Remember, Rudy could not be elected dog catcher the day before 9/11. That's Chris Christie right now.
The legislature will do what's in the legislature's interest as they understand it. Christie will do what's in his interest. There's nothing new or shocking about that. The system will function. Whether or not he survives politically or legally is based upon evidence that we don't know about.
No, we don't. Okay, coming up next, the push is on. People rushing to sign up for Obamacare by the midnight deadline, and 1.2 million people visited healthcare.gov by noon today. Now, we will weigh in on the home stretch and do the numbers matter in the narrative of Obamacare in the midterm election season. Stay with us.